Speaker, my question is for the Acting Premier. Acting Premier, the Chief Electoral Officer's report into the Sudbury by-election states, and I quote, "Summonses were issued requiring attendance at a designated time and place," end of quote. And so, Acting Premier, did the Premier receive a summons from the Chief Electoral Officer or his investigators, and is that how she came to be interviewed?
Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker. And the member opposite knows that the Premier has repeatedly answered questions in this House about this issue. We know that she takes it very seriously and that she is cooperating fully with the investigation. You know, Speaker, I must say that I don't think I'm the only one in this province who finds it very, very strange that the opposition has asked nothing but questions on the Sudbury by-election for the past several weeks, to the exclusion of all others. But I do know that the opposition party cares deeply about the economy of Ontario, and I know that they would want to share, they would want to know about some very important information about our economy that was released just this morning. Speaker, this is from RBC Economics, and I look forward to the supplementary because I know they care about the economy. I know they want a healthy economic future.
Supplementary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, back to the Acting Premier. Acting Premier, and you know that two-thirds of Ontarians think this is a very serious issue, and two-thirds of Ontarians want Pat Sabera to step aside and doesn't believe she should continue with her duties, her paid duties, in the Premier's office. Pretty well all Ontarians by now that pay attention to this place know that the Premier is not answering questions about the bribery scandal. She's not cooperating with the police. It's been 9 weeks since the investigation was reopened in Sudbury by the OPP, and she's yet to set a date, as far as we know, to meet with the OPP. I'm going to ask you, is the only reason she met with the Chief Electoral Officer's investigators in a timely manner because they had the power to summons her and throw her in jail, frankly, if she didn't show up? Is that the only reason? Because you know the OPP don't have that power. They have to wait for her to say yes to a meeting. So, you know, is the only reason she showed up is the threat of a summons?
Yeah.
I find the innuendo underlying that question beneath the dignity of the interim leader of the opposition party. The member knows that the Premier takes this very seriously. He knows that she's cooperating fully with the investigation. But I do think it's important to think about a bigger issue, and that is the economy of this province. RBC reported today that Ontario is expected to top provincial economic growth rankings in 2015, something that has not happened since the year 2000, according to the RBC Economic Provincial Outlook. Listen to this. Well, I know people want to hear this. RBC forecasts real GDP growth for the province to accelerate from an estimated 2.5.
Please wrap up.
To a 5-year best rate of 3.3% in 2015. That is great news for the people of this province, the people that we all represent. This is great news. We should be applauding this.
And final supplementary.
Well, back to the Acting Premier, Mr. Speaker. Acting Premier, it took 6 weeks for the Premier to meet with the Chief Electoral Officer's investigators into the bribery allegations.
The member from Newmarket, Aurora.
It's now been over 9 weeks since the OPP reopened their investigation into the allegations. We know now that the only reason the Premier met in a somewhat timely manner with the Chief Electoral Officer's investigators is because she was subpoenaed. And we all know that the OPP don't have those powers. They can request an interview, and you have to voluntarily go for an interview. Acting Premier, can you tell me what other citizen in the province of Ontario can just put the OPP off for over 9 weeks, thumb their nose at the investigators, and then come into this place and pretend that they're cooperating with the investigation? That doesn't hold water, Acting Premier. The people of Ontario see right through it. So tell us, what's the real reason why the Premier is stalling her meeting with the OPP?
Deputy Premier.
Speaker, I completely reject the innuendo and the suggestion in that question. The Premier is cooperating fully, as she has said in this House several times. She's setting up that meeting with the OPP, Speaker. But let's talk about the economic growth in this province. RBC notes that economic developments over the past several months have been overwhelmingly favourable for Ontario's economy. The plunge in oil prices, the sliding value of the Canadian dollar, surprise interest rate cut by the Bank of Canada, mounting evidence of U.S. economy is hitting its stride. These factors should all boost growth in Ontario. That's great news, not for the government, but for all of the people of this province, said Craig Wright, Senior Vice President, Chief Economist at RBC. The positive effects from the drop in oil prices and related developments will coalesce at a time when the provincial economy is already displaying rising momentum. They're not asking any other questions because there are no questions that are priorities for them.
Thank you. New question, member from Dufferin Caledon.
We're asking